We want to head to Miami Beach and Hillary Clinton supporter Philip Levine. Nice to see you this morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
You heard Tim Kaine there saying that, Hillary's going to be made available, and yet she hasn't been made available. 274 days until we've seen Hillary Clinton give a press conference. I've said I think this is a smart strategy. Hillary Clinton does not like the press. She tries to keep the press at arm's length, arm's distance. This is a smart strategy for her, is it not? Is this all part of it? Keep the press away until Election Day?
Well, I don't think it's a strategy, and I think Secretary Clinton has been very available to the press. She's always taking questions from the press. And, of course, now that she has a brand new big aircraft, you're going to see all the press flying around with her. But, listen, she's been in public office for, I think, in that world for 30, 35 years. And, when you have the press constantly asking her the same questions, I could do the press conference right now. Tell us about your emails. Well, the FBI absolved her and there's no criminal intent. And tell us about Benghazi. Well, the Congress did a huge hearing and there's been, no determination of wrongdoing. Or, tell us about the foundation. And, of course, the same question, there is no pay to play. So I think that a lot of times when you get the same questions over a lot of time, that gets very tedious. When I think Secretary Clinton likes to focus on how could she make life better for average Americans. What are we doing about Zika? What's happening with climate change? How do we raise the middle class? And I think these are more pertinent questions. And I believe going forward, hopefully we'll get more into policy, which I think Secretary Clinton, that is her real strength, is what can she do to make America, a better place for everyone to live?
Well, she's running as saying that she is the most qualified candidate to ever run for president of the United States. Yet as Secretary of State, what we're finding from these the documents that were dumped over the weekend on Friday, on this holiday weekend, that many are saying curious timing, that she didn't understand what the C meant in her emails and may have mishandled classified information, and that she thought it was alphabetical, like ABC, and that's what the C meant. How is she going to fight that off?
Well, as President Reagan said, here we go again. Once again, you're bringing up the old emails when the Republican appointed FBI director did a full investigation, and there was no charges because she did nothing wrong. But you're not answering my question. I asked about not knowing. If she's the most qualified, shouldn't she know how to handle classified information? I think she absolutely does, and we know that she does, and she was an incredible Secretary of State. But the FBI said there was no criminal take. Now, did she make a mistake? Did she make a mistake? I think she said over and over again she did make a mistake.
Mr. Mayor, you say
why can't we talk about what's really relevant to the American people? Why do we have to keep
let's talk about what's relevant to the American people. You say time and time again, like every Clinton surrogate, she was a fantastic Secretary of State. Please name for me, if you would, what are her top foreign policy accomplishments?
Well, I think one of the top things she did, of course, is put together that coalition to really put the sanctions against Iran. And it led us to a great nuclear deal. And I think that was very, very important. And I think the fact that Iran has a deal which doesn't allow them to have nuclear weapons, as opposed to going directly to war with Iran.
So she's running on the sanctions that they're violating right now. So she's running on the sanctions that they've already violated?
I think they're not necessarily violating them. I think, of course, once again, I know there's no such thing as fact anymore. We all try to come up with things that sound good on TV. But the fact of the matter is, let's be honest. The fact it was a great deal, and she's been a great Secretary of State.
Mr. Mayor, I want to talk about what she said in that FBI document, because this isn't new. What we just learned on Friday is all new to us. 58 pages of what we just learned. And one of the things that came out was this defense that she couldn't recall certain briefings because of a brain injury. Now, the Trump campaign has even gone so far as to claim brain damage for Hillary Clinton. And your response to that, she on the one hand is saying, I don't remember, and then trying to play it the other way and saying that, my time in office was I was a fantastic Secretary of State. Can she have it both ways, to both lay claim to not remembering and also laying claim to being a fantastic Secretary of State?
I think what she can remember is what is our policy for Zika? What's our policy for climate change? How do we make our middle class better? How do we secure our country? Come on. These are the relevant issues that Americans really want to hear about. We could go back and say, does Donald Trump remember about when he was renting his dad's buildings and he wouldn't rent to African Americans? For some reason, he can't remember that. But yet we have a lot of policy and a lot of statements that show that that's what he was doing. So I think if we focus on the relevant issues that the American people really want to hear about, I think she remembers all that, because I feel that she she is focused on making the country better for everyone to live in, and that's everyone that's here.
And Mr. Mayor, some of Hillary Clinton supporters have called Donald Trump terrible words like a racist and a bigot, partially for his plans on what to do with illegal immigrants in this country. But we've dug out some tape of Bill Clinton back in 1995 and what he said during the State of the Union address about illegal immigration. And there appear to be some similarities between what the former president said, her husband, and what the Republican nominee says. Let's take a listen.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
What do you think about that tape that we just dug out, Mr. Mayor?
Well, you know what's amazing? I think what's amazing is the fact that we're litigating a policy for over 20 years ago when the country was in a very different situation. That's when you actually had a real immigration issue coming from Mexico. Today, in 2016, we don't have those same net immigration numbers of Mexicans coming to America. But hey, listen, one of the things we could do is we can go back and look at FDR's policy towards Japan and Germany if you want to go back a little further. I mean, why are we litigating a former president's policy that's over 20 years old?
It's a very legitimate issue.
I don't think it's relevant today. I don't think it's relevant today.
So you don't think the issue of illegal immigration and how we enforce those laws, whether we enforce them, whether there's a border, is a legitimate discussion today?
But I think everyone believes we need a strong border. That's not even an issue. But I think what you're talking is you're taking a speech from a former president over 20-something years ago, and you're relitigating it today. And, you know, and President Clinton, let's be honest, he's not on the ballot. Secretary Clinton is on the ballot. And you can't look at old policy. Want to look at prohibition policies? We could relitigate prohibition policies from, 80 years ago.
We're not talking about that.
But he is in a way on the ballot because Hillary Clinton said she'd put him in charge of the economy. I want to ask you, though, real quick before we wrap things up.
And I think everyone would like to see that. I think everyone would like to see that in the future, that's for sure.
Front page of the New York Times this morning, young blacks voice doubts about Clinton as Donald Trump has been making speeches in Detroit and other areas and talking directly to the black voters. Lack of enthusiasm is worrying Democrats. Are Democrats taking the black vote for granted?
No, I think the Democratic Party has done so much alongside the African-American folks since the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s all the way till today. When Donald Trump says, what do you got to lose? If you look at the history of the advancements of the African-American population with the Democratic Party, they have a lot to lose. Secretary Clinton has spent her entire life helping African-Americans. She has a long history of doing that. Donald Trump has a history since last Saturday when he showed up at a black church for the first time in his life. And we don't want to get into some of the racial policies of him and his dad when they owned real estate, and of course they wouldn't rent it to African-American families. So I think we're talking about very different people. The African-American population, very, very smart. They know who's for them. They know who will help them in their lives going forward.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us this morning and answering some tough questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Miami Beach. Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.
And if you see Hillary Clinton, tell her we'd like to have her on the show as well.
All right. Well, you just heard from Hillary's team. Donald Trump tells a black congregation in Detroit this weekend he's here to listen. We'll talk more about that next.